I am so excited today to have the first guest on our show, Kawthar Abdullah, who is a Yemeni American living in the great city of New York. And she just received degrees in Middle East Studies as well as International Relations. And Ms. Abdullah is with the Yemeni Alliance of New York. Is that right, Kawthar?
Yes, the new chapter, yes.
Great. And so obviously we're going to talk about Yemen today. I think a very underreported story. In my view, the most important story in the world is probably the least reported. And that's why we have Ms. Abdullah here today to tell us a little bit about it. So, Kawthar, tell me a little bit about what is happening in Yemen. And you have family in Yemen, is that right?
Yes, I have family in Yemen. So right now Yemen is going through turmoil. The war in Yemen started on March 26, 2015. I was actually in Yemen during that time. The wedding hall that was bombed was actually my friend's, and I was supposed to go to it. So
a wedding, one of the first
Arabia,
weddings bombed. Yeah, okay.
Yes, that day, the first wedding hall, it was my friend's wedding. It started in 2015 when the Saudi-led coalition wanted to reinstate the internationally recognized Hadi government against the Houthi, a rebel indigenous group. And so it's just been like blockade, constant bombings, displacement, hunger, famine, everything that's been going on in Yemen with Western support.
Tell me a little bit about.
Summarize it.
Tell me about that Western support, and particularly U.S. support. When did it begin, and what does it entail?
So it began under the Obama administration. Barack Obama actually gave the green light to the Saudi-led coalition to, take lead on reinstating, on the bombing campaign in Yemen to reinstate Hadi. And so the United States plays a role in providing arms sales. It has sold billions of armed weapons to the Saudis. The weapons are used on funeral halls that killed over 100 people, 100 Yemenis, wedding halls, school buses, you name it. It was used with American weapons. The United States provides intelligence, and it refuels mid-air jets for the Saudis, and as well intelligence, and also has the first military role it played in Yemen was in 2016. They called it retaliation, but
yes, there are some U.S. troops in Yemen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yes, there is.
And at least at one point, there was a blockade of Yemen that the U.S., as I understand, was also helping to enforce.
Yeah, the blockade is still ongoing, and it is one of the biggest reasons that the war in Yemen, the humanitarian aspect in Yemen, is exacerbated. The blockade is naval, air, and sea.
I have heard, air and sea. I have heard the crisis in Yemen described as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, maybe the greatest humanitarian crisis in modern history, with potentially millions of Yemenis dying ultimately from hunger, thirst, and disease. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I've heard that from the United Nations. I even heard it from Samantha Power, who was behind, was in the Obama administration when he began the war.
Yeah, so Yemen is the world's worst humanitarian crisis. In 2017, there was an endemic of cholera, where every 10 minutes a child under 5 dies.
Of cholera,
And
yes.
every hour a person dies. And it goes back to the blockade, and it goes back to the constant bombings. The displacement, the unsanitary facilities that there is unavailable water, lack of access to water. 70% of water is through like trucks, like that needs it. People in Yemen mostly live in rural areas, and so in order for water to reach these areas, it needs trucks. And because of the blockade, that Saudi Arabia denies the oil tankers in the ports to enter the country. Therefore, it fuels an internal, crisis within the fuel. This fuel also is needed for generators in hospitals. Hospitals can't run without generators. It fuels this lack of fuel also exacerbate prices within like people traveling, or like some people's only main source of income is like driving buses, or so all of this the blockade contributes in one way or another to the worst humanitarian crisis of the century. And it doesn't get as much media's attention as it should. As much as the bombing is horrible and all of the other things, the blockade is one of the biggest causes of this humanitarian crisis in Yemen.
Yes, in terms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Over 2 million school children are out of school. Over 100,000 Yemenis have been killed, and it's like all of this is being hidden from the media.
Yes, and the U.S. is giving billions of dollars to the Saudis, billions of dollars of military equipment,
Mm-hmm.
or selling them that, I guess, and which allows them to continue this war. At one point, I read even that the U.S. had supplied cluster bombs, anti-personnel bombs, to the Saudis, which they were using there. And you mentioned the cholera epidemic, and I want to tell our viewers and our listeners that this cholera epidemic in Yemen is the largest known cholera epidemic ever in human history that we know of. There's also a diphtheria outbreak. And of course, now Yemen is having to face the COVID crisis amongst all this. Yeah,
there's also other diseases such as like the serious floods, and they contribute, or other diseases that are not known yet, but that people are dying from because of like unsanitary places of living, or lack of, again, water or whatnot. So it's like more than just like COVID and cholera and like these known diseases.
And I saw that while there had been some humanitarian aid that was given to Yemen, that's been cut down to very close to nothing at this point.
Yes, on the same day that COVID-19 was first reported in Yemen, U.S. aid was cut to Yemen. The Saudis pledged an amount to give to Yemenis, but it was just for the media to say that they're going to help. They haven't really acted on their pledges. It was just for, I guess, like hype to like downplay their image. The Emiratis, the Kuwaitis, all of them have pledged, but they all are not acting on their pledges. And this is like the U.S. The UN have cut on many medical centers that tracks cholera, that helps women, that helps children. A lot of aid has been cut. workers have left Yemen because there is no funding has been cut so drastically. The UN had requested more than $3 billion in order to help Yemenis, in order to sustain them, because 80% of the population is in need of humanitarian aid, and they were giving only 40% of that. And so that made them cut on a lot of services, the humanitarian essential services to Yemenis.
What do you think is
right now? Yeah.
No, go ahead, please. Continue.
Like right now, Yemen is on the verge of famine again.
And I've heard that. Honestly, I've heard that Yemen is on the verge of famine for years now, which makes me think that maybe it's over the verge. That is, that it may be in the process of famine. What are your thoughts about that?
The thing is, Yemen are being pushed to famine. It can be prevented. It's not inevitable that they will starve. Like, they are being pushed, they are being cut of essential services on every side. Like, you have a population that's being bombed, that's being displaced, that's a blockade. The economy is tripling. Like, I know my aunt she's a teacher. She haven't been receiving her salary. So many services have been cut, and so like they are being pushed to the last resort. Their only help was from outside, from the UN and whatnot, to support essential services, and now that's also being heavily defunded. And so Yemenis are actually being pushed to famine. It can be prevented. It's not like there is no way to stop them, or there is no way to stop the famine from happening. But again, I think it's a pushed agenda on them.
Why do you think the world is turning away from Yemen? Why is the world not giving aid to Yemen, and why is the news not covering this crisis?
Well, the Saudis and the UAE have invested more than $100 million in lobbying in Washington, D.C. to ensure the continuous support of the war, of their role in the war in Yemen, and of course for media outlets to downplay or mislead the population. If they do cover it, they cover it as Houthi, it's a proxy war, or they cover it as a Shia-Sunni war or whatnot, when in reality it is an assault, it's an imperialist attack on Yemenis. It's not a proxy war between Iran and Saudi in Yemen. Like, Iran is not doing what the Saudis are doing inside of Yemen. It's not a Shia-Sunni thing. Sunnis and Shias have lived in Yemen in peace for centuries, thousands of years. That's not what it is. And if the media does cover it, that's how it portrays it.
What do you think the end game is for the Saudis in Yemen? If they get what they want, what would that be?
The Saudis have a long tradition of interfering inside of Yemen, and so whether it's our books, doctrine, everything, they have a say in our internal politics, and so they fear that the Houthis wouldn't be as comfortable having a say in our domestic affairs anymore. And so this is, if they do get their way, they want to continue interfering inside of Yemen comfortably. They want to have an inside puppet where they can say whatever they want and it goes. And they also want to, they want to be the powerhouse in the Middle East where they control every country. And so you have this indigenous rebel group who are rebelling against this regional superpowers that threatens their power, I guess, as they see it.
And I want our viewers to know that Yemen is an ancient country that has a number of UNESCO historic sites, beautiful ancient structures that are being destroyed by the Saudis as we speak. I would urge people take a look for photos of some of those ancient edifices in Yemen. Well, let me ask. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment on that. I remember in January or like late February when Trump made a comment that he will bomb Iran's historical culture site, and the world was like, "Oh no, you can't do that. That's a war crime," and that is true. Like, that's very inhumane. But the Saudis have been doing that inside of Yemen, but no one bats an eye.
If people want to help, if people watch this or listen to this and they're concerned, what can people do to help Yemen?
Okay, so they can urge their Congress to call the representatives to end the Saudis, to stop selling arms sales to the Saudis, to reevaluate the relationship with the Saudis. They can pressure their congressmen or senators to urge to vote to adjust the military budget, the NDA vote. They can donate to any Yemeni organization to help. Just show up for Yemenis, have these conversations, spread awareness.
Maybe you can send us some links we can put up of places to donate. Could
Yes,
you do that?
I can do that. I will send you a toolkit that Yemeni Alliance shares with its viewers. We also have this trusted organization that does really great work inside of Yemen. We can also share that if you would like to share with your viewers if they want to donate. And we also have like a script if you want to call your senator or Congress person to urge them to end the Saudi support for Yemen.
Great. We'll put some of that information up. And do you have any last words for us, for our listeners today?
I really, really urge everyone to go out there to listen, investigate, talk to, just read the language, just not what the media puts out, because the media can be very, very misleading, but also kind of decode this imperialist message, because there is a message that kind of tries to portray this war as, and tries to downplay it and whatnot. And so always just ask the right questions. Be a critical thinker of what's happening there. If it doesn't make sense, question it, and just help. Talk to other Yemenis, look at organizations, show up for if there's a protest for Yemen. I guess.
That's great.
And just be a great ally.
That's great. You're a great
voice.
voice.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. You're a great spokesperson. Really enjoyed getting to know you. And could you just remind us, because we can put this up, the date that wedding was bombed? Can you tell me that date, and we'll look for some photos or something?
It was March 26, 2015.
Okay. March 26, 2015.
Yes.
Great. And if you have photos or anything, the first day. Okay.
Yeah.
Why didn't you go to the wedding?
I have
What kept you from going to the wedding?
It was the first. I remember that day vividly because I was really excited about the wedding. We woke up to our neighbors knocking. It was 5 a.m. around that time, knocking open the door because we had a generator, and they wanted to see the news because they heard that Yemen was being attacked early that morning. And so we opened the door, we opened the TV, and we saw that the Saudis have started a bombing campaign inside of Yemen. And so my family, my parents were here. They're like, don't go, it's not safe and whatnot. And so I ended up not going because my parents were very concerned. So yeah, I guess that was why.
Well, you have some pretty smart parents.
Yeah, Yemen, our house was been bombed, by the Saudis. We have family members. 2 of my uncles have been missing for almost 5.5 years, so we don't know if they're dead or alive. We are our extended family has been displaced from their homes. Aunts, uncles, civil servants, they have their salaries stopped. So it's it's this war is really personal.
Well, we're glad to get to know you, and we'll have you on again, too.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you as well.
Thank you. Salam.
Alaikum salam. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. To learn more about Yemen and other conflicts that you may know little or nothing about, check out my book, No More War by Skyhorse Publishing. Came out in the spring of 2020. I think you'll get a perspective, a fresh perspective on these things that maybe you'd never thought of before. Thank you. That's our show for today. If you like the show, please like us, subscribe. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And also, we're going to have a Patreon link that you can specifically support this show. We need your help to keep continuing to keep having guests like Ms. Abdullah. So come back. We'll see you next time.